Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Through the Bible in a Year series. This morning, we're in Numbers. The irony that, well, I guess it's a little ironic that we're reading. I think isn't it today? We're reading Numbers 21 today, and that's the passage that we used in the service yesterday in the sermon. But today I want to talk about Numbers chapter 12 and Miriam and Aaron's rebellion. There is just so much that goes on in this passage that I can't skip over it. For one thing, number one, as I think about it, and now I'm realizing I should have done a split screen on this to so you could see what I'm looking at right now, but oh well. The first thing we notice is that Miriam and Aaron, the reason that they are so upset is because of Moses' wife. Now, we're not told anything other than that she was a Cushite. She was from Cush. This is, in our terms, there's theological, racial, and ethnic boundaries that are being crossed here. We don't know much about Moses' wife. She just kind of comes on the scene at some point. But Cush is, in the biblical world, Cush is what we would now call probably Ethiopia or Sudan, somewhere in that neighborhood, just south of Egypt. So this woman would have been ethnically very different. She would have been racially different. She would have been far darker with a different skin, different hair. And theologically, she would have come out of a completely different theological background from Miriam and Aaron. And this woman became a source of contention for Moses and his siblings. I think that among the things that the Bible wants us to see is that while the Israelites are special to God, and while the Jews are important and they are God's people in many ways, the Bible does not exclude other cultures, other races, other people groups. In fact, again and again, especially in Exodus and Leviticus and Numbers, other groups are there's this tension where other groups are being brought into the community. So like the Cushite, the Kenite, the Egyptians, they're all being brought in and being made part of the people of Israel. And yet at the same time, there is this recognition that groups outside of Israel are the other. And we can go one of two ways. We can just completely forget about these passages, as so many do, and say, well, whatever. And just disregard the fact that this woman is so drastically different, and Moses is trying to make her part of the community. Or we can go the other direction and overplay some of the distinctions that Israel was supposed to destroy these other groups and all these things. But neither of those are right. What we are supposed to see is that Israel is meant to work with and include these other groups, like the Egyptians that come out of Egypt with them, the Kenites who intermingle with them, the Cushite. They're supposed to include these groups. They are supposed to make room for these individuals. What they are called to prevent is that they fall into the trap of adopting the culture around them. They're supposed to include everyone. They're supposed to work to bring everybody into their group, while at the same time remembering that the important thing is not to fall into the religious and social traps of those groups that they are surrounded by. God, you see it, God wanted Moses and the people to eliminate these groups that are surrounding them as they come into the promised land, but not simply for the sake of genocide. It really wasn't meant to be genocide. If you look at the names of the groups and the way they're related, there's a lot more theological construct than simply anthropological. There's a lot more of religion than there is the society and the people and the ethnic demographics. In other words, God wants Moses to be aware and the people of Israel to be aware of eliminating the false, the negative claims about God, while at the same time trying to integrate the people. But I think one of the realities that God wrestles with, and that we should too, is that while we try to integrate everybody, there are some people who are more stubbornly aligned to what they want than what is true or good or perfect. And so while Moses and Israel were really supposed to eliminate the ideologies and the religions of the people, there were going to be some people who were going to resist that. But all of that is represented here, where Moses brings in this woman of a different ethnicity, and Miriam and Aaron reject her. There's also this issue in this passage of the fact that Miriam gets leprosy from her confrontation with Moses, and Aaron escapes whole and healthy. And the question was always raised, why? Why is it that the woman is punished but the man gets off free? Well, in this case, while we would like to see both guilty parties punished equally, the reality is that Aaron is the high priest. And for the high priest to come down with a skin disease and be unclean throws a whole monkey wrench into the religious system of the day that God just established. And so what we have to wrestle with in this instance is that God wants to punish the guilty, but has to recognize the system, has to work within the system. And even all of Israel has to recognize the system. That's kind of unfortunate for Miriam. And I think in some ways it's kind of unfortunate for Aaron, because I know that sometimes the punishment is what gets you to think about and rejudge your actions and your attitudes. And so not being singled out, not being punished, getting off without any kind of difficulty, in the long term, that might be harsh for Aaron, simply because he doesn't necessarily recognize his difficulties, or where he needs to change, or how he has been guilty and culpable. I don't say that to try to get this passage off the hook. This is a very difficult passage to work through, and it deserves far more thought than what I'm putting out there for a few-minute devotional. But we should recognize that part of the cultural reality is Aaron's role as high priest, and the difficulties that would surround that if he would have been punished the same way Miriam was. But I hope you're enjoying Numbers. Some of these chapters are strange, like Numbers 12, Numbers 21. They're difficult, but some of the stories are really good. The story of Balaam, which is coming up here soon, is really good, and I enjoy it a lot. So I really hope that you're enjoying Numbers, and I hope that you stay with us. And until we meet again, God bless.